It's been rather horrific for me to learn over the years just how much human trafficking actually happens here in Colorado and in the Denver area. Carolyn McKinnon deals with this with her organization,
Streets Hope.
Streets Hope. I was going to say something else. Streets Hope. Tell me about Streets Hope first.
Streets Hope has been around since 2004. It started basically as an outreach program for women engaged in sex work on the Colfax corridor. Over the last 15 years, it's morphed into a residential program, which it no longer is. And now we're a community-based program working with a lot of organizations around the city.
And you say an organization for sex workers along Colfax.
Yes.
Was that for people who were trafficked? Were those people who did it by choice? What was that?
It wasn't really a question at that point.
Really?
15 years ago, there wasn't a lot of understanding about what the difference was maybe between sex work and sex trafficking. Human trafficking has kind of come into the popular consciousness maybe in the last 10 years or so, I think more.
And it's been really slow. I mean,
it really has.
You hear about sex slaves and you want to giggle because it has a different connotation. When you say human trafficking, that focuses your mind a whole lot.
It's true.
Tell me, where do these people come from? How do they get here?
Yeah. So most of the victims in the United States are United States citizens. That's another myth right there.
Stop there for a second.
Yeah.
All right, so my sense of human trafficking is, somebody gets kidnapped in
Right.
the outskirts of the Ukraine someplace,
Right.
Answers an ad to be a maid someplace, and it turns into something else, and she's gone. That's my sense of it.
And that's actually a good sense. That's not untrue. That is not a scenario that doesn't occur. However, it's not the most common scenario. And when you're talking about trafficking in the U.S., you're talking about people who are citizens of this country. Some might be here foreign-born citizens, so they might be here on work visas or other types of status, but most people are from here. Most people know they're traffickers. That's another huge myth. People think it is kidnapping. People think it is Taken, the movie Taken. Very dramatic. It's often a series of events that occur with a known person to the victim.
It's like sexual assault. The idea that somebody pops out of the bushes while that happens is not nearly the same as it is someone you know, it's someone of trust, and over time something happens. Is that a good way to put it?
It's partly true. Okay, I'm not going to just say that's the blanket explanation.
Give me kind of the story. Give me a typical.
So the thing
story
to understand about human trafficking that's important is that human trafficking is sort of what happens when hope and poverty collide. Okay, so people have a dream of a better life, but they are in circumstances that don't actually allow them to achieve that. And so you have more powerful people than the victims saying, come over here, I'm going to pull you along to that better life. And in the meantime, a lot of different things happen, and those things are exploitation. We like to talk about a spectrum of exploitation and choice. That spectrum is actually also a spectrum of power and lack of power.
I need an example. I need to hang my hat on something. So
Okay.
tell me, put some meat on that so I can visualize it.
Okay. Well, it can be, if you want to go with somebody, you gave a great example. Someone in another country, maybe say a Northern African country, has an education.
Thinks they're going to get a job as a maid or someplace else.
How about this? Sees an advertisement online for a job as a nurse. So that's a pretty good chain. That's a pretty good thing. Comes over here. This is an actual case that happened in Colorado. Comes over here. The person, the trafficker, explains that they will need to hold on to their identification, to the person's identification, for safekeeping, and to make sure that the authorities here do not treat them badly.
Because where they come from, the authorities treat them badly. They are criminals.
They're coming from somewhere where you don't rely on police or government. Exactly. They're coming from a situation of instability and vulnerability. So they come here, they're told they're going to be a nurse, they're told they're going to earn $60,000 a year, there's a whole class of people, they show pictures online of Loretto Heights College, the tower.
Wow.
This is a real case that happened here in Colorado. And when they get here, they take the ID, and then they're told they're going to go to work in a nursing home as a basically just someone, a nurse's aide or something like that. They're housed in a certain place, maybe all together, many people in a room, and then they're told, then they start being told that they have debt bondage, that they're actually owe the person that brought them over money for bringing them over and giving them these opportunities. And so the lies and the exploitation just sort of piles on top, one thing on top of another, until people are truly trapped with no identification, very low wages, if any, psychologically traumatized, maybe physically neglected and traumatized, and it's very difficult to escape from a situation like that.
What's hard for me to wrap my head around is that you see a place and it's a massage parlor,
Sure.
but it's got bars on the windows or something, and something just doesn't seem right. And you think about it and go, if there are people being trafficked, being forced into prostitution in a place maybe like that, maybe not that place, but you think there's freedom and safety right outside that door,
but
right through the window.
Mm-hmm.
And so what my little brain can't quite process is, how in the world can they not know just to go outside and that there are people there who want to help them? We understand there's a cultural barrier, there's speech barriers and all the rest, but at some point you think that all we need to do is drop them this message, get out, and there will be a system to help you. Am I right to think that even if you were to give them that message to run out the front door and they'll go to the police, they will help you, that wouldn't do much?
It would not do much.
Why wouldn't it? Why would it do
Because what you're not understanding is the relational bond that occurs between a victim and a trafficker. And that's where economic analysis doesn't really address the issues of human trafficking. It doesn't give enough information about what happens in the situation. And so their relationships develop, and you cannot undermine or discount
We're talking
the level.
Stockholm Syndrome?
We are talking Stockholm Syndrome. There is a level of fear and psychological trauma that is unbelievable. And a trauma bond is essentially formed often, not always, but often, between a victim and a trafficker. And so it makes it very difficult. And if someone's here from another country, often the person that's trafficking them is someone who's known to their family or them as a cultural navigator. Someone who's going to help them figure out how to live in the United States, how to get through the system in the United States.
This is seriously twisted stuff, and it's complex. Talk to me a
very
little bit about
complex.
the person who's trafficked who's from this country. Again, my little brain would say, wait a second, maybe this person comes from bad means, maybe all what you're saying about poverty crashing into hope caused this, but they know the language, they know the culture, they know the police, they understand that while not every cop is good, by and large, we have a system of laws. They should be able to run out the front door and do that.
I'm going to argue with
they don't.
with you about that a little bit, because I think a lot of people of color do not believe that they can trust the police. A lot of people whose gender identity is different than yours and mine do not believe they can trust the police. A lot of people who've lived in generations of poverty, who have not gone to school because they don't have the opportunity to go to school for whatever reason, don't believe they can trust the police. There are communities in our city that do not trust the police. And so I think
But they trust their captives more? They do know the culture. They do know the culture. And if they're with a customer and they don't want to be with a customer, they know what's going on. They know the language. Can't they communicate better to the outside world?
But what if someone is saying to them, I'm watching you, I have your phone monitored, I see where you are, I know what you do, I will beat you, I will hurt your children, I will kill your mother. Those are the kinds of things that happen. What if someone is put in such extremes of survival, and that's what we're talking about, is usually people that are trying to find ways to survive. That's how that happens. I've sat, on Colfax in a place with somebody who was being trafficked and had her screaming at me, all I need is a job, all I need is a job. Someone who's never probably made it past second grade. and all she wants is she wants a way out. She wants a way out, but no one can give her a way out.
Often we don't see things until we're acclimated to them. This is a stupid example. People come to Colorado and go, it's so brown and colorless. And I go, no, it's colorful Colorado. Stay here for a while, and once you get used to it, you see things you haven't seen before. I'm assuming this is a bit like that. And help us understand, if people were to open their eyes and see trafficking in Denver, how would they see it? I mean, what is it they would look for? What would they go and go, wait a second, something's not right there?
Yeah.
What is that?
So there are signs of people being trafficked. You know, if you have construction going on in your house or your building, and there's a crew of people that show up every morning, and there seems to be, none of them speak English, and there seems to be someone who's in charge of all of them, and that person seems to tell them when to work and when to stop, and if they're allowed to stop or when they're allowed to go to the bathroom. If you tried to talk to them and said, where do you live? They might not know. If you asked them where they were, they might not know. If you asked them who their boss was, they might not know, or they might say, it's my uncle, my brother, something like that. They could look physically malnourished. They could look psychologically beaten down. They could have, you know, more, in the case probably more of sex trafficking, they could have unhealed bruises and different bruises at different stages of healing, or wounds at different stages of healing. They could look dirty. There's a lot of different ways that somebody could recognize this, but it's tricky. It's tricky.
Are you acclimated enough that you see it?
Once you start to see it, you see it.
How pervasive, we've only got a minute here, how pervasive is it in Denver, in Colorado?
Well, what do you mean by pervasive? I'm sorry to ask a question, but it's
I don't know what I mean.
It's here. It's here. It's here.
It's not a small problem, it's a larger problem.
It's a larger problem than people realize. Is Denver the most city with the most trafficking in the U.S.? No, it is not.
Right. Again, less than a minute. People want to help. What should they not do?
I think people should educate themselves first. They should not assume by watching a movie or by listening to this conversation that they understand the problem. They need to seek out more education because it's complicated.
Where would they go for that?
They can go to our website. They can go to the Colorado streetshope.org. The Colorado Human Trafficking Council has a lot of information. PolarisProject.org is an amazing website with a lot of information.
If they see someone in need, should they intervene?
I would be very, very cautious. They could ask the person if they're safe or if they need help. But most likely, someone who's being trafficked is being watched, and they're not going to be able to give a good answer. So there are things you can do. There is a National Human Trafficking Hotline. I can give you that number.
Go ahead and say that number right now.
I don't have it. I can't.
I can't. So
streetshope.org.
Streetshope.org.
Correct.
Caroline, thank you so much for the brave work you do. Thank you. Listen for me on KHOW Radio. Read me in the Denver Post. Check out the Independence Institute at thinkfreedom.org. We'll see you next week.